what we're trying to do and what you're still actively doing every day is be educational archaeologists to dig out the education that our founders got that brought us to the brilliance of this flag, that kids for generations now have not even heard of. The depth of the consequences of bad ideas once rooted in the mind, we are in a Western experiment for what that looks like, because we're totally untethered from our past. Effectively, well, we know in public education, God has been completely rejected. And we're overturning our own story about who the good guy is. And unless we start to try to reverse that in our homes, we're not making a dent.
Boy, it's been quite a wild ride as we have continued to see Battle for the American Mind get the word out about classical Christian education. I know we just released not long ago the paperback version where it talks about our New York Times status. Thanks a lot for your help on this project. Thanks for doing the project.
Kidding me? Best project I've ever been a part of. And, you know, I still hear, it's still the thing I hear the most about everywhere that I go is this book. And it was a providential partnership. And I hope some people pick up the paperback like they did the hard copy and hand it out to family and friends.
Well, that's great. So I'm going to read a quote from it and we'll comment on that and see where it goes. So this is from chapter 6, and it starts out, but the progressive paideia we've described thus far isn't the sort of Marxist nuttiness that we see from schools today. With the WCP gone, the new American progressive paideia could be morphed to form almost any culture. But what culture? The progressives spent the rest of the 20th century, post-1965, formulating a new paideia based in critical theory that villainized Christianity in the West. We'll call this the Cultural Marxist Paideia, which rose to maturity after the year 2000. So, Pete, just to quickly encapsulate this, Paideia, of course, is the ingredient in that we put into kids through the education process, and that's an involved thing we talk about in the book. But we talked about the progressives at first taking it over and putting America in place of Christianity, which is what essentially replaced the Western Christian Paideia with the American Progressive Paideia. And then eventually around the year 2000, they've been able to completely take over the hearts and minds of kids with the Cultural Marxist Paideia. So what are you experiencing out there as you talk to people in the media and in the places that you work regarding this shift?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I still think there are a lot of people almost permanently set in the American progressive paideia, right? They're sort of like stiff-arming the cultural Marxist thing, saying it's not quite here, or it's not that bad, or it's not in my town, but at least I've got the flag. You know, what do I have? Like 5 of them behind me and 1 on my hat. You know, like we're all part of the detox of the Americanism foil, which you can love America and recognize its special place in human history and what it was founded on, without putting your faith in it and believing it will save us. And I think that's what so many Christians and conservatives have done for a long time, is replaced God with, as we talk about in the book, replace the Bible and the cross with the flag and the pledge. And what the left did so deftly was to quickly maneuver underneath that flag and pledge and turn it into what they wanted it to look like by changing language. Things like words like democracy always have been for the left, this sort of very malleable frame under which they dismantle the Constitution or disregard our founding values. But all of that was simmering under the scene. And then the manifestation, what I think so interesting about the book is it doesn't say, oh, cultural Marxism showed up in 2020 or during COVID or because of BLM or all of these 1619 projects. The soil had already been tilled as we point out, at the beginning of the 21st century. That's basically when the commanding heights were totally controlled, and begins to be pushed even more so down into the K through 12 level. And so you get a generation of kids who are baptized in cultural Marxism and speak the language and have a social justice lens and look at it through the hierarchy of power structures and oppressor and oppressed, colonization, all of those buzzwords become the rhythm of academia and therefore the language of activists and of kids. So you're the one that really helped me think through that phasing as we wrote the book, and it fits, but it all tracks with the classroom. It tracks with the educational prerogatives, first in universities, but then pushed into everywhere else. And I shudder to think, if we don't correct course sufficiently, what the full manifestation of the cultural Marxist paideia will look like. I mean, yes, it started in 2000. Again, this is all roughly as we talk about it, but 20 years, here we are. What's it going to look like in 20 years from now if it's left effectively unabated? And again, voting somebody in, as great as that isn't enough to beat back the wave of government schools and the wave of what kids are learning. So it's still happening right now, and there's a lot of ways in which the phases overlap. But what is America when you talk about Americanism? Devoid of faith, devoid of natural rights, devoid of an understanding of our founding principles. It's not America. So if you're clinging to it, hoping it will save you, you're clinging to a failed vessel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun to look over your shoulder. Your shoulder tells the story on your left shoulder. It looks like you've got a variant of the Betsy Ross flag with 1776 right behind you, and then to the right of it and to the left, you have the conventional 50-star flag of today. And if you go to the story of those two times. In 1776, there was not an American public education system that was indoctrinating our founding fathers into some schema of American politics, nor was there in 1820. It took a long time to get that developed. That 50-star flag is closer to the time when it was developed in the early 1900s. So the very thing that was the seedbed in education of our founding fathers, the Western Christian Paideia, was replaced by the time the flag had 50 stars on it.
100%. And that's what what you've taught me, and what we're trying to do, and what you're still actively doing every day, is be educational archaeologists to dig out the education that our founders got that brought us to the brilliance of this flag, that kids for generations now have not even heard of. I mean, the depth of the consequences of bad ideas once rooted in the mind, we are in a Western experiment for what that looks like, because we're totally untethered from our past. Effectively, what we know in public education, God has been completely rejected. And we're overturning our own story about who the good guy is. And unless we start to try to reverse that in our homes, we're not making a dent.
Well, and just like it was in the early, we sometimes may forget that during the colonial times, America was the hinterland. It was far away from England. It was far away from pretty much everything, and that's where this kind of cultivation of an insurgency can begin, when we start to retrain the hearts and minds of kids.
Yeah, that's what our founders were. They were insurgents. Yeah,
they were insurgents operating in the backcountry of Virginia, if you can believe there was a backcountry of Virginia. I think mostly the whole place at the time. So this insurgency, of course, has got a lot of facets to it. You're working, doing lots of great work in various ways on Fox and in other places. And then the Association of Classical Christian Schools, where I work, our goal is to replace the progressive infrastructure. That takes resources, time, and money. And so we're just hoping that anyone who is engaged in the insurgency will join us financially. And thanks a lot for joining us, Pete.
Well, absolutely. And I know, I don't know how much I can disclose and all of that. That's up to you. But I know building that infrastructure is not just building schools. It's building training of teachers and educators, boards of schools, facilities. How do you start a school? I know you're involved in a project directly about that right now. So, for anyone watching that knows somebody that writes big checks to woke universities, like a big check to ACCS or to your efforts is exponentially more effective. well, not more effective. It undoes the detriment of a donation to a university like that. So I encourage people.
Well, thanks a lot, Pete. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you soon.